In this video, I will be showing you how you can develop a lead generation system inside of N8N that will enable you to scrape up to 50,000 leads for a particular ideal customer profile, enrich those leads with the full LinkedIn profile information of that specific lead, and qualify those leads against your ICP. If you don't know me, my name's Luke Clark and I own an AI automation agency called Catalina AI. If you're interested in working with us, click the link in the description below. Additionally, the N8N template and Airtable base will be available for free in the link in the description so that you can easily get this system up and running for yourself. Alright guys, so first I'm going to give you a demo and an overview as to how the system works, and then I'm going to go into a step-by-step walkthrough as to how you can get this system up and running for yourself. This system is built using Airtable and N8N. Airtable will act as the user interface, and when we take certain actions inside of Airtable, like clicking this Start Campaign button, automations that are in the back end of Airtable will trigger. For example, if I click Start Campaign inside the Apollo Campaigns table, it will trigger this automation called Scrape Apollo, which is when a record matches conditions if Start Campaign was checked. And what that will do is it will then send data to our automation workflow, which is inside an N8N, and trigger certain actions inside here. So how does the solution work and what can we do with it? In this Airtable base, we have an Apollo Campaigns table. And inside the Apollo Campaigns table, we can start a campaign to scrape leads from Apollo. So what do I do here? I just fill out my campaign name. So for example, in this case, I've filled out founders of marketing agencies in the United Kingdom. I then fill out the ideal customer profile details of the ICP that I want to scrape leads for and that I want to outreach to. So in this case, I've also just put founders of marketing agencies in the United Kingdom as my ICP description. Then I need to import an Apollo search URL. So if you don't know about Apollo, Apollo is basically a really large database that is full of millions of leads. And you just need to come over here to Apollo and implement some filters here for the ideal customer profile that you want to scrape for. So for example, in my case, I've put an email status as verified, job title as founder, the location as United Kingdom, the employee company size as 1 to 10, and industry keywords as marketing and advertising. And when I'm happy with my specifications and my filters, I just take the URL from the top here and I input that into the Apollo search URL field here. Now, then I fill out the number of leads I want to scrape. As I said, you can scrape up to 50,000 leads from Apollo with this automation, which is really crazy. And in order to do, I'm using a Appify scraper called Apollo Scraper, scrape up to 50,000 leads. If you don't know Appify is basically a marketplace where people develop scrapers and put them online, and you can then use them. And in this case, for example, we can scrape 1,000 leads at a cost of $1.20, so very affordable. And so you just fill out the lead number. I don't want to scrape 50,000 leads in this case. I'm just going to scrape 500 leads because that's actually the minimum amount of leads that you can scrape. And then you click Start Campaign. When you click Start Campaign, an automation will fire. The campaign status will update to scraping complete when the scraping is completed, and all of the leads will be inputted here. So I already just ran this automation, and 500 leads, if you look here, were inserted into the Apollo leads table. I don't want to show it just live because it takes a little bit of time for the automation to run. But here you are, you have founders of marketing agencies in the United Kingdom. You have the name, the ICP details. If I just scroll over here, first name, last name, title, headline, company, industry, website, company LinkedIn URL, email, LinkedIn profile URL. You can see we have the email here for every single lead, nearly every single lead. Okay, LinkedIn profile URL, city, country. And what then happens is we can enrich further with LinkedIn profile information. Now you can set this automation to trigger immediately once the lead is filled, but I don't want this automation triggering for every 500 of these leads. So if you come in here to automations, we have an automation called Enrich Apollo Profiles. And this is also implementing when a record matches conditions. And the conditions initially are the LinkedIn profile URL is not empty and the email is not empty. So if there's a lead inside in the Apollo leads table where the LinkedIn profile URL is not empty and the email is not empty, this automation will trigger. And I've just added this extra condition here to have more control of the automation triggering for this specific video. So basically, I've also put the enrich lead is checked condition into this automation just for the purposes of this video, but you can remove it easily just by clicking X here inside the automation yourself. So just for demonstration purposes, you click enrich lead. We can maybe enrich like 10 leads here. And what will happen is that automation will trigger. It will send data into our N8N workflow here. The execution will fire. We can see that many executions are running here. We come back, we see that the leads are being enriched with full LinkedIn profile information. Very interesting. We get the LinkedIn headline. We get, the about page of their LinkedIn, all that information. And we get the experience, and in some cases we even get the phone number, right? So very interesting information. And then this is information that we can then use to qualify our leads, and then in the next step to even generate hyper-personalized emails or LinkedIn messages for those specific leads. That's an automation that I'm going to show you in the future, but it's not in today's video, okay? So if you're interested in seeing that automation, make sure to click the link and subscribe below. All right, so the leads get enriched, and when the leads get enriched, another automation will fire, which will trigger the Apollo leads to emails table, which basically sends those leads that are enriched. For example, let's scrape and enrich a few more leads here. Okay, that will enrich another bunch of leads, and they will all get sent into the emails table. So you can see founders of marketing agencies in the United Kingdom, they're already being sent in here. So now the new leads that are being enriched are being populated here. And then finally, we can qualify our leads. So there's another final automation in here to qualify leads. When the conditions for that automation are met, the system will then qualify the lead against our ideal customer profile. So again, I've just put some constraints here to prevent the automation from firing for every single lead, but I'll just click the qualify lead box here, and now we'll go ahead and qualify the lead. And you can see we just got the qualification score. We got 9 out of 10, meaning that Mark from this company, TLC Ads, is highly qualified against our ideal customer profile. So basically he should be 100% a founder from marketing agencies in the United Kingdom, of a marketing agency in the United Kingdom. So for example, we can see just by going to his website here, it's a Google Ads agency, and I presume they're based in the UK with their .co.uk website. Yeah, they're a perfect lead for us in this use case. So you can scrape up to 50,000 leads from Apollo, as I said, with this automation, which is really cool. And then in the last video I showed, you can also, and you can still do it in this automation, you can scrape leads by implementing a Google search. And this is very useful for finding leads that maybe are not inside an Apollo. So for example, we can say founder of digital marketing agency in the United Kingdom, or we could even change that to, let's say, SEO agency in particular, because we're interested in targeting SEO agencies at the moment. Founder of SEO agencies in the United Kingdom. You just input founder as the job title, the marketing agency as the company type, location United Kingdom, company size 1 to 5, industry marketing, and then you click start campaign. So that will basically trigger a Google search here, and then it will enrich the leads here. And what the automation will do, if you didn't watch my last video, is it will basically implement a Google search. So if you come in here, let's check our executions. There's several executions still running. Let's see. Okay, so this is the execution that was implemented in order to scrape the leads. And if we go into here, we can build a Google query inside this step. And as you can see, it's running a sitelinkedin.com query. And this is the actual query that was implemented for this particular search. And if we go into Google here, and we just do a Google search like that, we will get all these LinkedIn profiles for people that meet this Google search. And of course, the ones at the top, if you know anything about Google search, will be the ones that are most relevant to our Google search query. So these are the best ones, and those are the ones that will be scraped first. So for example, if you scrape 10 leads using this automation, the first 10 leads are likely to be the best leads for you, are the ones that are the closest match to the ideal customer profile that you want to scrape for. So we initially will just take the LinkedIn profile URL, as that is all that is available to us from this search. And then we will implement this second step here. So if I go to this execution, this second step will be implemented to enrich the lead with the LinkedIn profile information. And we're using the Appify scraper to this one, mass LinkedIn profile scraper with email, no cookies, to enrich the LinkedIn profile information for those leads. So if we come to Google search here, we can see the leads have been scraped and the leads have been enriched with, again, company name, company website, company LinkedIn, about, experience details, and yeah. And every lead in both the Apollo campaigns table and the Google search campaigns table that has an email address is sent to the aggregated leads table, and those leads are then qualified against our ideal customer profile. So for these example 5 leads here, we got a qualification score of 10 out of 10, 10 out of 10, 10 out of 10, 9 out of 10, and 9 out of 10. So that's an overview of how the automation works. As I said again, you can just remove the condition to qualify the lead by just clicking it. For example, if I go in here and I just come to the qualify leads and I click inside the conditions and I click X, that means when any lead is sent to that table that has an email inside, which is basically every lead, the automation will immediately fire sending data to N8N. So that was an overview and kind of a demo as to how the system works. And now I want to show you exactly how you can get this system up and running for yourself, okay? So I'm going to provide a link to the N8N template and the Airtable base in the description below. And you just need to download the N8N template and import it into your own N8N account. And then you also need to copy the Airtable base and just duplicate it into your own Airtable account. So you will need N8N and Airtable in order to set up this system, okay? So as I said, we have an Apollo campaigns table. You'll be able to duplicate all this information, but the only information that will not be duplicated into your Airtable account are the automations, unfortunately. So you need to set these automations up for yourself, but I can show you exactly how to do that. So the first automation is scrape Apollo. The conditions are when a record matches conditions if start campaign is checked. When the record matches those conditions, we're going to update a record. And the record, we're going to update the campaign status to scraping leads. And that's just a nice touch that gives it a bit of a user interface type feel. The next step that occurs after we update the record is that we run a script. So what we're going to do is we're going to implement this piece of code here. And what this script basically does is it sends the Airtable record ID to our N8N webhook with the action, in this case, scrape Apollo. And so you just need to put the webhook URL here for your N8N automation. So if I go back to my N8N automation, you just need to click on the webhook here. You can get your test webhook URL when you're first setting up the automation, and then when the automation is running perfectly, you can switch to the production URL. So you just copy that, you go back to Airtable, you set the webhook URL exactly as it's written here, and then you input your webhook URL, okay? You then again write record ID exactly as it's written in the code, and then you add the Airtable record ID, and then you input your action here. And the action in this case is scrape Apollo, and the action is very important, okay? And this is the exact same automation that we basically use for every single one of these automations here. So for example, for enrich Apollo profiles, the conditions are slightly different, but the script that we run is sending information to the exact same webhook with the Airtable record ID, and the action is just slightly different. The reason the action is important is, so initially with this automation, we want to scrape Apollo. And the action, so for example, I'm just going to show you a test use case of this by first switching this to our test webhook URL, and then I'm going to click execute here. So now it's listening for data to be received into the webhook, and I'm going to click test automation. Okay, there's no, that's because okay, now when I click this, it's going to send data this time to our test webhook URL, and you can see, okay, so data is now being received in there. I'm just going to stop the automation. So, and what's nice about N8N is you can also pin data like this, which is very helpful for debugging your automation and so on. But if you look inside, what did we receive here, okay? If you go inside this switch node here, we received with a record ID. So that's the record ID of this record inside of the Apollo campaigns table. And we go back to N8N, and we also receive the action. And the action is just, this is a really great way to build N8N automations in a very modular way. Instead of building one super long automation, we can break the automation down into these modular pieces that kind of run more efficiently for one specific use case. So for example, the action here is scrape Apollo. And inside the switch node, I have, when the action is equal to scrape Apollo, this branch will trigger. When the action is equal to enrich Apollo profiles, which is what's going to be sent when we want to enrich Apollo profiles, this automation will trigger. When we want to scrape Google leads, this automation will trigger, sending the action of scrape LinkedIn profiles. And inside our switch node, we have scrape LinkedIn profiles here, so that will trigger this automation. The next one then is LinkedIn lead enrichment, and the last one finally is lead qualification. And we set these automations up inside an Airtable to trigger one after the other once certain conditions are met. So this is really how you should be building out your automations inside of Airtable and N8N. So we basically, so the record ID is received. Then we need to retrieve all the information for that specific record ID. So we use a get record operation inside of N8N, and we're just setting record get from our Airtable table, our Airtable base, LinkedIn lead machine in this case. The table that we want to get the record from is the Apollo campaigns table, and then we just input our record ID like that, okay? And then look what we get back. We get back all of our campaign information. And here you have the Apollo scraper set up. So you actually don't need to change anything. You just need to input your own Apify API key here inside the value field under token, okay? And this will basically enable you to call the API to initiate the Apollo scraper from Apify. And yeah, it's as simple as that really. Then we just insert the records into the Airtable. And then finally, what we're going to do here is we're going to get the record ID from the campaign table, and we're just going to update the campaign status to scraping complete. So very simple. Then let's take a use case for Apollo lead enrichment. So in order to trigger the Apollo lead enrichment automation, we can just, first I should set the enrichment to our test webhook. And then I can test for one of these example leads, run the automation that will send it to N8N, which is now triggering our Apollo lead enrichment step. And it's basically the exact same. So the action in this case that was received was enrich Apollo profiles. That initiates this get record automation, which uses the Airtable record ID that's received inside the webhook to get all the information for that specific lead. So as you can see previously, we were retrieving information from the Apollo campaigns table. Now we're retrieving information from the Apollo leads table. And the record ID will enable us to do that because inside the enrich Apollo profiles table here, our condition is set upon the Apollo leads table. And the run script is then going to send the Airtable record ID from the Apollo leads table, not the Apollo campaigns table. That will send it to N8N. The Apify scraper for enriching the LinkedIn profile information is again preset for you here. You just need to input your API key at the end of this link. Okay. And then we're just going to do some data manipulation here to grab the exact fields that we want. In this particular automation, I'm not actually grabbing the followers and connections and these kinds of things, but that information is available to us, I believe. If we go down a bit here, for example, skills and endorsements we have, even profile picture dimensions. Now there's really a lot of interesting information that you can grab from LinkedIn. Here, look, connections. So this particular person has 7,470 connections and 9,186 followers. So they're obviously very active on LinkedIn. And then we insert that, or we use an update record in this case. So we're grabbing the ID from the get record from campaign table. So it's basically the record ID again of the Apollo lead, the specific Apollo lead that we want to enrich, and we insert all our enriched lead information. Okay. Then the next step, this particular part of the automation is used for scraping information by implementing a Google search. So I'm just going to show you again, scrape LinkedIn profiles via Google search. I'll update the webhook here to webhook test. And when start campaign is checked, this is going to trigger. So let's go back to our N8N automation, execute workflow. And then in here, we can so we have 10 leads set here, and we can just click start campaign again. That will trigger our automation. And the data is received inside there, and that's very quick. Okay. What this is basically doing, we again receive the record ID from the Google campaigns table. We retrieve that information. We set a campaign name. We set our ICP. So in this case, I'm actually just setting the ICP like this. So here we have founder, United Kingdom, marketing agency 1 to 50. So that's the information such as the job title, location, company type, and company size that we were inputting inside of our Airtable here. Company type, location, company size. Then we build a Google query. So this is the Google query that's being implemented behind the scenes. As I said, it's a site linked in Google query. We have an if statement here. So Serper Dev, it's basically a API built on top of the Google SERP API that enables us to retrieve all those search results. So you just need to go to serperdev.com, set up an account easily, and get an API key. So you can go to API keys here and get yourself an API key. And then you just need to set up your credentials by clicking here. And you just put x-api-key and you insert your API key. And that's all you need to do. Everything else, you can leave it the exact same. The thing is that, so that should actually be 20 in this case. The reason that should be 20 is that when you're implementing a site linkedin.com search, Serper Dev will only enable you to retrieve 20 search results per page. Basically, the way I've set this up is that if we want to scrape 20 leads or less, we'll implement this automation to retrieve all 20 leads from the first page. But if we want to retrieve, for example, 40 leads, we're going to implement this step. So that's why we have this if statement here. So if greater than or equal to 20. And what this will do is we'll basically retrieve those 20 leads from the first page, and then it will loop over the pages. Okay, so then we'll go to the second page, retrieve 20 leads, the third page, retrieve 20 leads. We'll do some, again, data manipulation here, insert the LinkedIn profiles into the Airtable, and then update the campaign action to scraping complete. The second to last automation here is for LinkedIn lead enrichment, and I won't go into it because it's actually the exact same as this automation here that I've already covered. Initially, we were enriching the Apollo lead information. In this case, we're enriching the LinkedIn lead information. And then finally, there's two other automations inside here in Airtable. We're going to send the Apollo leads to the emails table. So when the email is not empty, the website is not empty, and the LinkedIn headline is not empty, when all those conditions are met, we're going to create a record inside the aggregated emails table here, and we're going to insert the first name, last name, LinkedIn profile URL, title, headline, email, and all of this good information here. We're going to do the exact same thing for the Google search leads table. So when the email is not empty and the website is not empty, we're going to create a record inside aggregated emails. So I'm calling it the aggregated emails table because all of the records inside that table will have an email address, and we'll have both the Apollo and the Google search leads inside that table. So we just insert all of the information again, first name, last name, LinkedIn profile URL, and just fill out every column basically. And then finally, we have this step to qualify every single one of our leads against our ideal customer profile to ensure that we are reaching out to a highly targeted lead list that matches our ICP. Okay, this improves the efficiency of our outreach. So if we go to aggregated emails here, again, as you can see, I've put this condition here, but if we go to the qualify leads, the conditions we have is when a record matches conditions, this time from the aggregated emails table. When email is not empty and the qualify lead is ticked, we will send the data to our webhook. So again, I'll just change this to the test webhook so you guys can see it in action. We will send the Airtable record ID, the qualify leads action, and that's our piece of code, which is the same for all of our automations. So I'll just click execute workflow here. Then I will click test automation. We'll just take an example lead here that we want to qualify against our ideal customer profile. And as you can see, it's coming in there now. So the action was qualify leads, which triggered this branch. Then we want to get a record from the aggregated emails table using that record ID. We get all that information. So first name Chris, LinkedIn profile URL, title, city, everything. Okay. And then we're going to pass that to a large language model. I'm using Google Gemini 2.5, and we're going to pass. I jumped ahead. So here we're doing Tavily extract. And Tavily, again, if you didn't see my last video, Tavily is basically a fantastic tool that you can use to scrape the web. You basically just go in here, okay? You can go over to the API playground. You just need to get yourself an API key, and you can do an extract, which basically you input the website example, and this will just extract all the data from that particular website. So here's the entire website data for Nike.com. Okay, and then you can also do a crawl, which can then be used to crawl all of the websites for a particular website. Okay, and scrape all of the data from the website. So it's a really interesting tool, very useful. I use it a lot. In this case, we're doing a Tavily extract to scrape the information from the website of the company that our lead works for. So here we have the website that we're taking from the aggregated emails table. We get the full raw content of that website. And then here inside an LLM step, nearly finished, we're passing our target ICP, so founders of marketing agencies in the United Kingdom. We're passing the company name, the title of the lead that works at that company, their LinkedIn headline, their LinkedIn about page, or about information. I can click this button here to open it up a bit bigger. LinkedIn about, company size, and the raw website content, which is really interesting, of the website that person works for, okay? And then using all of this information, the lead data, we can ask the AI to compare this data against our ideal customer profile, which in this case is the founder of a marketing agency in the United Kingdom. And we're basically going to ask Google Gemini 2.5, score this lead from 1 to 10 on how close he matches my ICP, okay? So if we go into the system prompt here, we give the AI a role. You are a highly specialized AI lead qualification analyst. Your sole purpose is to meticulously analyze lead data against a defined ideal customer profile, assign a numerical qualification score. And then we provide some more details here of the input data that's being received into the user prompt, how you should deconstruct the ideal customer profile, synthesize the lead profile, and so on. And then we provide a scoring rubric. So a perfect fit is a 10. The lead aligns perfectly with all of the primary criteria of the ICP. Okay. Then we have strong fit, good fit, moderate fit, weak fit, and highly unqualified. And then we're finally telling it your response must be a single whole number between 0 and 10. So that just avoids the AI from providing all this additional commentary or giving outputs like the lead score is 8 or example 8 out of 10. We just want the number 8. And that's exactly what we got here. So we got 9 for this particular ICP. So he's highly aligned with our ICP. And then we just update that. And then we just update the record inside here in Airtable. All right, so that's it for this video. That's how you set up a lead generation system inside of Airtable and N8N. I really hope you got some value from this video, guys. I know I went a lot into the details of how the automation works and how you can set it up for yourself inside of N8N and Airtable, but I hope I didn't ramble too much. If you liked the video and you got some value from it, I would really appreciate it and subscribe, as it really helps out my channel. Additionally, you're probably wondering what the next step is, and the next step is to use all of that interesting LinkedIn profile information and website data to create personalized outreach. And we can create personalized outreach via LinkedIn and also email and potentially other platforms as well. So they're the kind of automations that I'm going to be releasing in my future videos. So if you're interested in learning how to set up those kinds of systems, make sure to subscribe to the channel. All right, that's it. Thank you guys, and I'll see you in the next one.